Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Sleeping Saturday of our podcast, where we answer questions from all the viewers. That's what we do. We sleep in a couple extra hours. It's 8 o'clock here in upstate New York. Kaustubha's in New York City, and people write in their questions, and you too can write in your questions. We try our best to answer them. Wisdom of the Sages 108@gmail.com. Mara takes them all in. We go through them. We split them up. And sometimes when there's something we feel like, this is out of our league, we call on a specialist. Like today, we have lovely Dunya, who's here, who's a big part of our team as well. Is a family counselor, couples counselor, and all-around sweet devotee. Welcome, everybody. That's where you guys say welcome.
I thought you were saying welcome to everybody.
Oh, welcome everybody. Okay.
Thank you, Raghunath. Thank you.
I also want to say that Facebook people, if you're listening on Facebook, we do this every week. We do it every day. It's a study of the sacred literature of India, the yogic literature. What does yoga mean anyway? Connect spirit with the divine spirit. And that's what the message of the Bhagavat, or the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam is. It's 18,000 verses, and we're going through all of them in 12 big volumes of books, and we are in Canto 4. But right now, we're going to do Q&A day, and tomorrow I want to make a big announcement. We have Drew Lawrence, incredible Sanskritist and Vedic astrologer, and just like an all-around great guy, but we're all incredibly impressed with his astrology and how to put Vedic astrology, which is more like math, being a mathematician blended with an engineer, blended with like a therapist all in one. And his last show he came on, everybody loved him. So we asked him to come back. So he will be back tomorrow. If you have any questions for him, send them to Mara today. Maybe she can put them on file. Send Mara especially Zoomers, you can direct message her as well. All righty. What's up, Kaustubha?
Other
Anything
announcements? I thought you maybe had an announcement or two about Satchidananda Swami. Did you want to get into that? Or?
Yeah, let's get into it. We're doing a program at Super Soul Farm with Satchidananda Maharaj. It's actually part of our bigger Wisdom of the Sages retreat. So Kaustubha is going to be up. Mara's going to be here. I'm going to be here. It's going to be at Super Soul Farm in upstate New York, about 2.5 hours from New York City, 2.5 hours west of Boston. But the first few days, which is a Tuesday through a Friday, we're going to have Maharaj here as well, too. We're going to go really deep into Bhakti. Maharaj is a very deep person, goes deep into our chanting, starts to explain it in a very relevant way. And I've been with him in his workshops, and he's just a special gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
So me and Kaustubha there, you know what you're going to give a talk on? I'm going to give Slaying Our Inner Demons.
Slaying Our Inner Demons.
That's going to be the theme.
I'm not sure. I think it'll have something to do. Let's see. But the theme of the entire retreat will have to do with like our internal practice, right? Internal spiritual practice.
Yes.
So we'll figure it out.
So that is the 7th through the 10th. And then the 10th, which is Friday, We're all going to pack it up after the morning, head to New York City to start our Wisdom of the Sages in New York City retreat. So some people have already signed up for the whole week. If you're interested, especially in the upstate, space is limited. So who do we contact, Mara, for that?
Bhakti Retreats 108 at gmail.com.
Awesome. Bhakti Retreats 108 at gmail.com. It'll be filled with delicious prasad, food made with love, harikatha, hearing and chanting all day long, lots of singing, and just good company in the beautiful outdoors. And then we'll hit New York City, and then we'll all go to the New York City Rath Yatra on Saturday. So if you've never been to that, if you're sort of like, a lot of people listen to the show, they're sort of like, they're listening privately, checking stuff out, poking their head, nose in, touching their toe. Wait till you end up walking down Fifth Avenue with a bunch of people with their hands in the air singing Hare Krishna. It is, do you remember your first Rath Yatra in New York, Kaustubha? Mine was like, I was practically in tears the entire
Do you
day.
want to hear about mine or no?
Yeah. Tell me.
No,
Tell
you
me.
go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, that was it. I was in tears the whole day. I had like a smile pasted on my face. Where were you? What was your story?
My story was, I remember the Rath Yatras before I knew anything about it. So I was just sitting because I used to hang out in the park, I was like, what are these people doing? Where did all these weird people come from? And why did they take over the park today? That was my first experience. But but once I was into Bhakti, it was a great thrill.
Yeah, it's almost like Bhakti you feel like when you're walking down Fifth Avenue with your hands in the air, it's almost like, this is it. Bhakti's taking over New York City. That's the feeling you got going. And you feel like, yeah, Lord Jagannath is here. It's an incredibly inspirational day. So that's going to be part of our retreat. If you're interested, Bhakti Retreats 108 at gmail.com. And then me and Cindy, I want to also mention me and Cindy Lunsford, May 19th to the 22nd. We're having a Bhakti and yoga immersion. So it's vinyasa yoga, sort of like an advanced training, and Bhakti, especially great for teachers or advanced students. And Cindy Lunsford, everybody knows her from Hot Cindy Yoga at Instagram. She's a master, super strong, and a very sweet, inspirational devotee as well. So I'm excited to do that with her. If you're interested in that, you can DM Cindy, Hot Cindy Yoga.
Okay, let's get into it, right?
All right, time for questions. And let's see. The first question is for both of us.
No, it is not. This one, first question.
Oh, it's for Dunya exclusively.
Yes, who holds a master's degree in counselor's education and holds a specialist degree in couples and family therapy. And so we got this question, and we're just like, nah, this one's for Dunya.
Pass. Yeah.
But it's a serious question. It's a real serious question. So do you want to read it? Shall I read it?
I'll read it. Steve from Arizona via email. I find it very difficult to get immersed into new groups of people because of my anxiety towards interpersonal or group communication. I've been studying Bhakti and Krishna consciousness for a few years, but I have very little association with spiritual teachers or even other devotees or yogis because of my issues, i.e., think Asperger's. I know the Bhagavatam expresses the importance of association with others seeking Krishna consciousness. These deep anxieties I have make me feel like I will never live a completely fulfilled life, especially in a spiritual sense, because none of this comes naturally to me. To make matters more interesting, I'm 29 years old, so there is even more pressure that I should be, that I shouldn't be so internally fragile and spiral further inward. Do you have any advice or know of any guidance in the Bhagavatam related to these kinds of issues? I appreciate you both for giving your time to us each day. That was very sweet. Dunya, help us.
Yeah, so it's a great question because I think to some extent we probably all struggle with this, the interface of, I'm into Bhakti, I love the philosophy, I'm getting into the books, I love the food, I love the kirtan, and then I have to like interact with other people. And because Bhakti is so open and so welcoming and people access it from so many different angles, you get quite a mixed bag. You get quite a mixed bag of people, so it can actually make for quite an interpersonal challenge, which I think at the end of the day can be really fortifying for our bhakti, but certainly presents challenges, right? It like creates friction with our ego and with our kind of all of our conditioning. So it's totally a super important question. There's that added layer, that this individual feels like maybe they have a diagnosis where they're kind of running deeper with anxieties, or there might be some neurodivergence, right? So when we're talking like Asperger's or being on the autism spectrum, it means that their way of interpreting certain social cues or signals may be different than what many other people experience. So that it adds like kind of an extra layer of challenge.
That's like a biological kind of thing, or it's
It's
mental kind of programming?
Yeah, it's there. They've studied it. A lot of times it does happen from birth. It can also be a product sometimes of trauma. They're really studying it because it's a unique phenomenon. However, there's all kinds of really cool treatments. Obviously, this would have to be like tailored to the person, but all kinds of really cool treatments of alternate ways of communicating and interfacing with people that are neurodivergent. And a lot of it has to do with just kind of self-awareness and self-soothing. So, in terms of just like the strictly kind of spiritual element there, because, this person's saying, okay, from the Bhagavatam's perspective, like, what can I do about this? So to kind of access that first, because it's the like foundational piece, the fact that this person is asking this question and is longing for the association of devotees is bhakti. Like that is bhakti. Like when you hear like the songs of Narottam Das Thakur, Bhakti-Vinod Thakur, like the lyrics are literally saying, I wish for the association. Why didn't I take advantage of the association? I long to be in the company of, so on and so forth. So separation from the devotees, I think in my book counts as definitely a special kind of devotional.
The feeling of separation.
Right. Yeah. And then, beyond that, when we think of association, there's like kind of two broad categories, which is like the Vani, which is the instruction or the knowledge that is imparted. And there's the Vapu, which is the form, like physically being in the presence of somebody. And I think the vast majority of what we see in Bhagavatam, and certainly our relationship with Bhagavatam, is association through Vani, is association through instruction. Like when we are reading the Bhagavatam, we're associating with Srila Prabhupada through his purports. We're associating with one another by hearing, along with one another, even if we're not physically in each other's presence, we're communicating with one another. And we're actually taking the association of the personalities in the Bhagavatam. And that is legit association. That's the most legit association. Srila Prabhupada makes all of our acharyas make a great emphasis on, if you're going to focus on one or the other, the Vani is going to be the instruction, the knowledge, the content is going to be primary. So in a very real way, even if you are having a hard time interfacing with devotees or finding a spot in a group or connecting kind of in real life, there's a very important need that gets met in our bhakti practice in association through Vani, or through the actual content of what we share in bhakti with one another. So that I felt like that was important to kind of put forth. Sure. Because you don't want to get down on yourself, like, oh, I'm not associating with devotees. But if you're reading Bhagavatam and you're hearing kirtan and you're listening to lectures, in the most real sense, you are in the association of devotees, and the primary means of association are hearing and chanting. So in that sense, you are definitely associating. Kind of going along with that, the reason why association is emphasized so much, it seems, is because we're associating anyways. Like we're always associating with somebody when we like walk out into the world, even when you have these diagnoses, and even when you have anxiety, and even when you have, whatever it is that you feel like might be a barrier between you and specifically, practicing Vaishnavas. Let's say you don't associate with them, but you're associating with somebody anyways. You're still interfacing with people in some way, kind of socially interacting with probably not spiritual practitioners or people who practice spirituality in a way that maybe resonates less for you. So it's kind of that awareness of I'm always in association. So now I just have to kind of direct that toward the association that makes me feel kind of most understood, or where I feel like I resonate more kind of philosophically. So in terms of that, kind of switching, from like the material association into spiritual association, I think it's also really important to kind of know where you're at. So a big self-knowledge component of this, especially with managing anxiety, and if you feel like there is neurodivergence, is being able to rate, what are my biggest anxieties? Okay, my biggest anxiety is I'm going to be talking with somebody and I'm not going to know what to say, or they're going to do like some sort of like body language thing that I'm not going to understand and it's going to feel awkward. Okay. So then maybe we create kind of a hierarchy of this is what stresses me out the most, the thing that kind of freaks me out the most to do. What's something that freaks me out a little less? Well, maybe going to a kirtan and just kind of sitting maybe off a little to the side, but being able to kind of sing and sing with other people. And then I roll out when the kirtan's done. Okay, that's a little less anxiety producing, even if there's something there. Maybe even a little less anxiety producing than that is just to kind of drop into the New York Rath Yatra in June. Just kind of come by, maybe get a plate of prasadam, smile at somebody, and then leave. Okay, so it's kind of doing it in doses, doing it in manageable baby steps, where I still get to approach with the right mentality, which is this is valuable association. You know, they say a Vaishnava is somebody that just as soon as you see them, it makes you want to go Hare Krishna. Like immediately it just kind of lights you up and it makes you want to chant Krishna's name. That could be from 500 feet away. I don't have to be next to that person. I don't have to be talking to that person. Right. So, you know, and many times, you know, they say that to see a sadhu once could be the kind of end of your material life and the beginning of your salvation. So all of these things, you know, we can take them as kind of like, oh, that's sweet or that's cute. Or we can be like, you know what? Let me look at as many sadhus as I can, because what happens if that's my moment? Let me get as close as I can to Jagannath's Rath Yatra cart, because someone's going to throw a sweet at me. And when I eat that sweet, it's going to be the end of my material life. Like, it's basically saying, yes, this produces anxiety. Yes, I feel uncomfortable. This is bringing up all kinds of neurological stuff. This might be bringing up trauma. This might be bringing up all kinds of hesitations that I have about people and relationships in general. Okay, so Krishna, that's what I'm offering. Like, that's what I'm putting on the line. I'm going to offer this to you and say, I'm going to stand as close as I think I possibly can to Jagannath's Rath Yatra cart, or to the deities, or to the kirtan party, or sit in this Bhagavatam class. And you know what? You take the wheel, you take the reins, like, I'm here for it. And it's possible that your greatest victory in that moment will be having done the thing itself, having offered that kind of into the fire, right? And it's going to feel like fire because it's going to burn. It's like tapasya, it's super uncomfortable, right? And it's going to kind of bring up stuff. So then that second half, I would say, is self-soothing skills. What do I know I need to do? And I've talked about this before. It's really kind of getting at the nervous system. It's kind of like the like authentic representation of self-care, which is, what do I need to do to get my nervous system back on track after I've had a bit of a disruption or I feel dysregulated? So is this deep breathing? Is this visualization? Is this having a stress ball? Is this being able to kind of pop in some headphones and listen to either a meditation or some kirtan or some nature sounds? Is this an aromatherapy, like little roller that I bring with me that I find like very soothing? Is it, you know, it could be as simple as chewing gum, just anything where I kind of consciously go, I'm safe. What I'm doing is actually safe. I'm okay. I'm okay. So a lot of that is going to be kind of doing an inventory of how, you know, what does it take to soothe me? And a professional can certainly help you kind of figure that kind of stuff out. But even with some self-reflection, if you create two lists, which is, what are my fears, describing the scenarios from like, this is definitely what's going to get me the most dysregulated, what I feel least comfortable with, all the way down to like, all right, I could probably give that a try.
So you line them up in a gradation.
Exactly. So they call it a fear hierarchy or an anxiety hierarchy, which is most severe to least severe. And then also you see like, oh, it's not that I'm terrified of everything. It's that there's levels to the stuff that I feel I can or maybe can't do. And then the other list would be, what are my particular things? And this can change seasonally. This can change according to different kind of moments in your life. What are the things that really soothe me and that I feel like will be able to bring me back to center if I start feeling a little bit dysregulated while I'm out at the temple or at a program or, you know, whatever. So having those two, then you start to line them up. Okay, if I go to this place, let me make sure I have these tools with me and I check in with myself to see how I'm feeling. If I'm going to do this thing, you know, same thing. So, and ultimately having that prayerful mood and having that surrendered mood of, Krishna, even my anxiety, I throw that into the fire. Even my, you know, what I think might be neurodivergence or Asperger's or difficulty interfacing with people, like, I'm associating with people anyways. So let me just go ahead and maybe do this as an act of sacrifice, well-informed and with tools, because this might be my shot. So, you know, I really want to put myself out there. I really want to expose myself in that way.
I have two questions for related questions. Dunya. Did you mention earlier a statistic of how percentage of people might have these kind of ailments?
I didn't, and the reason why is because it's a very broad thing. Basically, before in the previous DSM, which is like the kind of manual that allows you to diagnose these things, they had a very cut and dry, like this is autism, this is Asperger. Now they've widened it to a spectrum.
Okay.
And the way that they kind of assess these disorders is that you can have elements of it without necessarily completing a full diagnosis. So there are people who present with certain symptoms and they won't necessarily get diagnosed. The other thing is that it's also probably unreported. So whatever numbers out there is probably inaccurate. So it's definitely going to be under the kind of like 10% range, which is usually what they've thrown out there, that maybe 10% of the population is neurodivergent. So that could mean any of the kind of associated diagnoses that have to do with this. That might be an overrepresentation because you're putting all kinds of stuff, which might also end up being actually anxiety disorders or actually a genetic disorder or whatever. But it might be an underrepresentation because it doesn't go reported. So I kind of hesitate to throw a number out there because we don't really know. But it is a significant part of society.
But let's say we meet someone new, or someone new comes into, like say we were in a Bhakti community and someone new is there, and we see that, we notice that they seem really like very quiet, and even when you open up a conversation, they're kind of guarded, and then there's a reasonable possibility that this person, is struggling with something like this. Is that a relatively safe assumption to make?
Yeah, sure.
And so if that is the case, then my question is, flipping it the other way, when we're associating with someone that may have an issue like this, what is it that we could do to maybe make their connection a little bit easier?
Yeah, that's a great question, because a lot of times we'll actually do kind of the wrong thing. Like for people who struggle with autism symptoms or Asperger symptoms or these kind of neurodivergent symptoms, our instinct might be like, come on. And I just grab them by the hand and I pull them in, or like I give them a hug, or, come, you pass them the mic, like all, and these for people, like in a kirtan where they're doing like the whole community, like Gora does, where it's just like, everybody's going to sing today. Right. So that's like, it's maybe the worst thing you can do.
They may never come back. Yeah.
They may never, because it's overwhelming. And for them, they're already having perhaps a challenge reading the room, or feeling like they can interpret or are being understood. And so cranking up the sensory input is totally overwhelming. The kirtan itself, as it stands, Bhakti is a sensory overload in so many ways. Big flavors, big sounds, dancing, giant deities, flowers everywhere. And so it's magnificent. It's a festival for the senses. And for somebody who's neurologically very sensitive, it can easily tip into the red, where it's like, this is actually way too much for me.
I think probably, Kaustubha, you've experienced that with me when we bring people to these places, and sometimes we walk them right into that evening program in Vrindavan, and they don't know whether to like be incredibly joyful or just break into tears, or but it definitely does something to people in a deep way. But I've had it too. I'm notorious for saying, okay, now Mara, you sing. And it's like, oh, you throw someone on the spot. And I find there's two different types of people. Those who are like, oh, please call on me. And those people who are like, oh God, please don't call on me. Please, please, please don't call on me.
Even without the neurological disorders, what to speak of. Right?
Yeah. I'd love to see on our chat board people who would want to be called on and who would definitely never want to be called on. I'd just love to see it.
Well,
people wear a little name tag like, my name is Kaustubha, please don't call on me.
I did that, Dunya, at the last thing, because I realized, because I would do that, I would pick some people that I knew liked to sing. And then one lady came up to me after like a week and she said, you know what? I was really hurt that you never called on me to sing. And I was like, oh man, I can't win this one, can I? So now my new thing is I ask everybody, if I was to point to you, would you like to sing? And then certain people were like, definitively not me. And people like, yeah, sure, I'll try that.
Yeah, I'm sure that you have that in yoga classes too, right? There's teachers that say like, if when you're in a pose where maybe you're not like everybody's watching you, you'll say like, raise your hand if you're okay with adjustments, or if you would like to not have adjustments. because for some people, the level of vulnerability that they experience in a yoga class, to be touched, it could activate trauma, it could also sensory sensitivity and that kind of thing. So I think that, you know, I don't know that we have figured out ways to navigate that, but I really love what you're saying, Kaustubha, because like it puts some of the onus back on leadership and on organization and on having a variety of programs where different people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So it does kind of fall on us, if we're organizing or if we're leading a program, to be able to create spaces that are safe for people who maybe do have a sensory overload or who are, you know, neurologically sensitive. We got to navigate that for sure.
I think our tendency might be to think, oh, that person's weird, you know, and then just maybe feel some kind of barrier between us and them. But it seems like maybe there's a way, you know, without any kind of professional, you know, knowledge or experience, but just to kind of like maybe relate to that, like understand maybe that person is struggling with something like that, and then just kind of relate to them in a way where it's like, I'm kind of here when you're ready, and, you know, I'm comfortable with you being quiet, and, you know, somehow maybe not exactly saying that, but relating with them in a way that they feel like you don't think they're weird, and but they can still keep their space, something like that.
And you know, understanding that maybe there are people, even just the knowledge, there are people out there who have a really hard time understanding body language cues, eye contact cues, vocal cues. But if I feel like I'm pretty confident in reading those social cues, let me see somebody. If somebody's body language is like, hey, I'm in the corner, I'm not making eye contact, when the mic starts to get passed around, they kind of start to shut down. They're not doing a lot of dancing. They're kind of keeping to themselves, or they seem to be doing some sort of self-soothing thing, like breathing or, you know, that kind of thing. Let me respect that, like you said, and let me just be sensitive to that. And then also, you know, there are appropriate ways to check in. Am I connected to them in social media? Can I shoot them a message and just say, hey, you know, I saw you at the program. Would you like to be more involved, or do you feel like you were good, you know, how you were? And knowing that in the moment, like, hey, you want to come? That's probably not the best moment. And sometimes it's a shyness thing where all they needed was a little nudge, and then they're the ones like spinning and like whipping their, you know, like cloth in the air, dancing in the middle of the circle. But sometimes it may not be that, and it may really, really freak people out. And also, you know, if you do end up kind of overstepping, and they, you know, just offer a sincere apology of not knowing, because there is this part of the population that is struggling with these issues, and we're all taxed or challenged to navigate that intelligently, and we're not doing it maybe in full knowledge. So really being sincere and saying, hey, I had no idea. How can I create a space that's safe for you? How would you feel most comfortable? What would be ideal? And then modifying accordingly. I think that would be really touching for people who struggle with some of these issues.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
We couldn't have handled that.
No, we couldn't. I have no qualifications to. When you talked about her master's degree, I was like, what is my degree? Like, what am I qualified to speak on?
Me too.
Well, this is one for, thank you, Dunya.
Thank you so much, Dunya.
So we should do it. We should do a Wisdom Sages in northern Florida with Dunya.
That would be cool. We could do
We
it
would love
maybe
to
at the
have
temple
you.
there. Right? Yeah.
Springs weather just started. These crystal clear, ancient freshwater springs popping up everywhere.
A whole nother
Beautiful.
world. Florida's a paradise.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dunya. Are you going to hang with us for a little bit? Good. How can we follow Dunya on Instagram too? Maybe you could put it up on the board, and what is it?
Dunya music.
Dunya music.
Dunya music.
Oh yeah, we haven't mentioned a
she's
musical.
an incredible musician too. You can go to Spotify and check out Dunya as well.
Nita says he wants
Multi-talented.
to come, but he's already here.
She's multi-talented and has multiple degrees.
She does.
Okay. There's a question for you, Mr. Kaustubha.
Okay.
It's from
From?
Roger via Discord.
Okay.
I read something yesterday that shook me up. Not the first and probably not the last time. Intro to First Canto, chapter 1 through 8, Prabhupada relates the story of Junior Haridas looking at a woman lustfully. Mm-hmm. Lord Chaitanya banishes him. Then Junior commits suicide, and Lord Chaitanya says that is a just punishment.
Mm-hmm.
I struggle with lust. Can someone please offer another explanation other than that? Mahaprabhu thinks I should really kill myself. What am I missing here? Unfortunately, this left me with very negative feelings. Thank you, and please forgive my offenses. So
No
he's asking in a
offense.
very
Yeah.
sincere question, in a very sincere way, how do you deal with lust? And, Lord Chaitanya set this very, very high bar.
Well,
Kaustubha,
yes.
please.
Okay, so I appreciate it's not an offensive question anyway, and it's an important question. So let's get into it. There was a person named, Junior Haridas, or Chota Haridas. Something. Chota means like small. Junior means, like in English, junior. Because there are many, like within a Vaishnava community, within a Bhakti-yogi community, you're probably going to meet more than one person named Haridas, right?
Yeah.
So you got your senior Haridas, you got your junior Haridas, you got your Chota Haridas, you got your, there are other Haridases too. Any case.
Haridas
so-
Swami.
Yeah, yeah, right. So there's a story. Now, it's interesting that Roger read this in the intro to the Srimad Bhagavatam, where there's the life sketch of Sri Chaitanya given. Now, let's give a fuller context. In the particular bhakti lineage that Raghunath and I practice, and that we are representing, and bringing so much information, culture from, we understand that Krishna manifests in many different ways at different times, and he manifests as like avatar, like he comes at certain times. Now, within these ancient texts, it's mentioned that at a certain point in history, Krishna would come as a particular avatar. We call him the Yuga avatar, the avatar for this age. He came as Sri Chaitanya. It's an esoteric idea that it was Krishna wanting to experience what it's like to love God. If you are God, you can experience what it's like to be loved as God, but you can't experience what it's like to love God. And he wanted to experience that. So he came as Sri Chaitanya. And this Junior Haridas was a follower of him. Not only a follower, but like a close associate. He was younger. And it's mentioned here, he's reading it from this life sketch of Sri Chaitanya, which is the introduction to Srila Prabhupada's translation of the Srimad Bhagavatam. But that story is told in greater detail in another book that Srila Prabhupada translated, which is the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which tells in an extended form the life of Sri Chaitanya. And there we hear the broader story. He's asking, what am I missing here? I'm going to say two things that you're missing. One is that we understand, it becomes revealed through that story that although Junior Haridas took his own life, and what happened was he looked lustfully at a woman, right? And it was, and Sri Chaitanya rejected him. And I'm going to get into that in detail. But first I want to say, the community of Bhakti yogis were coming to Sri Chaitanya and saying like, hey, isn't this a little bit harsh? Like, shouldn't you soften up a little bit and kind of like accept him again? And he was adamant. He just would not budge. And then he disappeared. Junior Haridas disappeared, and nobody knew where he went, and everyone was concerned. And then it became understood that he must have taken his own life, because there was a tradition in India that if someone who takes vows of renunciation, vows of celibacy, lifelong vows, that if they were to break those vows, that they would go to this Triveni, right, where the three holy rivers meet, and they would take their own life. And so they assumed that that's what he did. Now, what Sri Chaitanya Sri Chaitanya was playing it like as if it seemed externally as if he wasn't concerned. But what others didn't know was that he was communing with him still, in his next form, right? And it's said that Junior Haridas used to sing for Sri Chaitanya, in his disembodied form, that they were connected in that way. So he was very intimately still connected. It's not that he rejected him externally, but on another level, they were connected. But I really want to get to what I believe is the essential message that we're meant to get through this. And I get it that Roger could read this and say, well, he looked lustfully at a woman. I don't know how many times in a day I might do that. Am I rejected as well? It's like,
What should I do?
What should I do? The key here, this is the real important key. Think about this. Now, like, there are so many so-called swamis in the world, right? And I don't mean to speak critically, but it's just a fact there are hypocrites in this world. There are people that present themselves as renounced, celibate, spiritually advanced guru, monks, and so on. They wear the color saffron, to present themselves as this, but they're living lives of hypocrisy. They're having affairs with, all of their female disciples and so on. We hear stories about this regularly, right? It's not like an uncommon thing. What Sri Chaitanya was saying is he's the savior of the most fallen, right? He's called Patita Pavana. He comes for us no matter how dented a can we are. He's there for us. He does not reject us based on our weaknesses, but what he rejects wholeheartly is hypocrisy, right? And he would not tolerate the hypocrisy. He won't. It's like in the practice of bhakti, it's no problem if we have all kinds of weaknesses, if we struggle with different things. Our problem is hypocrisy. And so this pastime plays out in such a way where an adamant statement is made, where if you consider yourself a follower of Sri Chaitanya and you have adopted the role of renunciate and taken the vows of renunciate, you have to take that very seriously, right? Zero tolerance for hypocrisy in that role. That's really the message of the idea. If you haven't taken those vows and you're not presenting yourself that way, then we understand we're all struggling with this. We're all doing our best. But if you have taken that role, you need to live it, right? And so that's really the message there. Is that all right?
You see
like
that?
To add anything to that, Raghu? Yeah.
You see that sometimes in a lot of Eastern cultures, like in Japan, where the person will take his life if they feel like they've failed their family or if they've let someone down or betrayed somebody. And it's sort of like this idea of like, nope, it's over. I'm just going to take my life now. This feeling of I broke my integrity. It's not worth living any longer. Stuff like that.
Karuna is asking, what does hypocrisy mean? Hypocrisy means that you pretend you're one thing when really you're something else. Right? You act like and integrity.
Nothing.
We call when our external is the same as our internal. Well, then we call that integrity. So hypocrisy is the opposite of that. So I hope that helps, Roger. We're all struggling with our weaknesses. We are not banned, from the association of the Bhakti-yogis and of the Lord himself. But what we should be very careful about is hypocrisy. Okay. You ready for a question, Raghu?
First, I'm going to word nerd you because she's wrote, what does hypocrisy mean? She wrote, what does hypocrisy mean? I was like, well, nothing to do with hippopotamus. But all right, check out this word nerd stuff.
Oh,
Calendar, right?
Calendar.
Time, kala, kal.
Okay.
That's where we get the word calendar from.
Okay, yeah.
Ready? Maha, mega.
Maha.
That's where they get the word mega from.
Okay.
Like that?
Maha means
Loka,
great or
loka.
big. Yeah.
Locale.
Loka. Well, you have to tell people what loka means.
Oh yeah, loka means like we say like a planet. Like a maha means like great, like a mahatma,
So
and
mega,
kal means like
huge,
the time factor. And chatur, guess what chatur goes into English?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this the other day. What is it? Chatur, quad, like quad, right?
Probably quart, like a quart.
Quart. What do you mean a quart?
A quart is like 1/4 of a
quarter.
What is it?
Yeah,
A quarter. Like a quarter. Yeah.
Or like a quart is 1/4 of a gallon.
Yes, I think. Right. Right. You went to private school. You know that.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your word nerding.
Okay.
And here's a question for you from Martina that came in via the Discord thread.
Oh, hi, Martina.
Martina writes, question for the Q&A day from my 11-year-old son.
Oh, man, those kids can really stump you.
Well, here we go. If the soul travels from body to body, how come we can't speak when we're born? If the mind travels with the soul, what knowledge stays in it? What is karma, good and bad? And what is karma's effect on someone's life? So some broad, deep, existential questions.
The 11-year-old stumps the mom. Then they bring it to us. Okay, hopefully I can help. So the first one, when the soul travels from body to body, how come we can't speak? Well, it's in there. We just got to get the instruments moving again and things come back. But interesting info is there are very, very peculiar anomalies where children start speaking another language.
There it goes right there.
I have to bring it there because it's real. Well, how do you explain that? You can't explain it, but multiple times this has come
Kids are
up
speaking
again.
foreign languages. Is that what you're saying?
Where a child under the age of 4 starts speaking in a foreign language.
That's mind blowing.
It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing, and there's a lot of cases recorded in that.
So then, what
anyway,
is it, in the average
the
case,
retaining
what is
of
it?
the? I'm sorry.
So in the average case, like, why aren't most infants speaking? Because
Well,
they haven't
they
learned to
just
use the mouth. Because they haven't learned the
yeah,
language.
they haven't used the machinery yet of the body.
What about
you know,
do they have the language? I mean, if that were the case, we would know something different. You know, why can't they access the information in the mind?
It's just not there yet. The hardware of the body is just not refined yet. But things will come back.
So it's as if when you leave one body, you take a lot of your information, but not all of it when you enter the next body? Or it's just all sitting there?
I don't know.
Okay. I think it's something like that, right? It's like the hard drives, there's some erasing going on, or, you know, but
Right.
Yeah, you know, so you start to have to learn things again. You have to learn language again.
Sure. The next question: if the mind travels with the soul, what knowledge stays in it? Well, you know, we say things like, "Oh, my daughter is very has a proclivity for art," or "My son has a proclivity for languages or music." Those proclivities are types of intelligence we're taking from a previous life. It's not like they're just randomly come out of the womb like very good at music. And you see this sometimes in these musical prodigies, where in the West we have no good answer for that. Like, why is Chopin or Mozart writing symphonies at age 4 when most people are like pulling the heads off their Barbies and GI Joes? It just makes no sense. So but the yogis say this is all because they were extremely gifted, and they take that information with them to their next life. It could be anything. It could be math. It could even be things like addiction, or things like frustration and rage. These all can get carried with you. It's not just the positive things. And when one becomes extremely rageful or extremely dark of doing bad things, or incredibly gifted things, it becomes much more visible in the child, and they show these proclivity towards one side of that spectrum. So that's information we take, and of course that could be with anything. You know, some people are really good with numbers, some people are good writing music, etc. So that's the information we take lifetime to lifetime. The next question is, what is good and bad karma? What's its effect on someone's life? We would call that good luck, good fortune, or a good situation. He was born into a wealthy family. That's some good type of karma. In the biggest picture, is it good? It really depends what you do with that good karma. Sometimes people get good karma. They get born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and they ruin their life. It enables them. They never step into their maybe some challenge that they need to take on to grow. But at the same time, some people take good karma and do great things with it. So good or bad karma is this good or bad fortune we have in our life. And how do we get it? We get it from good or bad choices we make in a previous life. But the real question in bhakti that we ask ourselves is, what are we doing with what we got? Sometimes people who are born in very unfortunate situations, they use that as a launching pad to change their life around. They say, you know what? This is what I got. I never want to do this again. I never want to be desperate again. I never want to be in this situation surrounded by these type of people. I'm going to radically change my life. And so their bad karma becomes a beautiful place for them. It becomes like a gain disguised as loss. So like that poetic statement there, Kaustubha. Okay, so that's good and bad karma.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we got one from Motherboard, I guess via email. They didn't give their name; they just called themselves Motherboard.
Yeah, that was the way it came in.
Well, all right.
Motherboard.
Okay, motherboard. I just wanted to say thank you for the podcast. And here's my question. My bhakti path is new, but faith in Krishna is growing because of the show. What are some practices, Kaustubha, that I can cultivate, Kaustubha, besides just chanting to deepen my devotion to Krishna? And is there a form of esoteric Krishna Bhakti to study?
Esoteric, very. Yeah, so yes, there is a form of esoteric Krishna Bhakti to study. We'll get into that in a second. So the question was, what are some practices I can cultivate besides just chanting to deepen my devotion to Krishna? That's the first question. And, I would say that what you're doing here on this show on a daily basis is one of them. It's called Shravana, right? There are different practices in Bhakti. Shravana means hearing. And one of the most fundamental aspects of the practice of Bhakti is this hearing. And that means you make a commitment. Just like we make a commitment in chanting. This is common in Bhakti practice, right? One will take even vows. I will chant on my beads. In this way, I'll count how many mantras I chant every day. And in this way, I'll be dedicating so much of my time and my mind to meditating on this mantra. In a similar way, we can regulate or, make a commitment that every day, a lot of people, they do a chapter a day of Bhagavad Gita, right? I read one chapter every day.
Yep.
That's a really great practice. If you do that, motherboard, it's life-changing, right? So if you're listening to Wisdom of the Sages on a daily basis, you're taking in some Bhagavatam every day. It's great dedication. If you read a little Bhagavad Gita every day, that'll be another real important factor. There are different practices. Another really important, I would say crucial practice that you can do to cultivate a deeper sense of devotion to Krishna, this is real important. You serve other devotees. You make that a point in your life, that every day I'm going to find a way to serve. That might, that can be done in little ways, like I'm going to carry your bag, or I'm going to,
Right.
it can be like that. It can be done in a very menial way. And it can also be done in a broader way where you really give your entire life to service of other devotees, But really, you make a point of that. You see that's built into Indian culture, right? Where it's like people, particularly with like sadhus, right? With like holy people who have given their life to God, people really go out of the way to serve them. Or even just common guests, right? When a guest is in a home, some people, Indian people will really go out of their way to serve them. It's a beautiful part of that culture, and it's an essential part of the practice of bhakti. That by serving great souls, right, one gains an affinity for hearing about Krishna. One gains an attraction, or you could say devotion to Krishna. So, in a practical way, I would say, I don't know you and your situation, where you live, what your opportunities are, but I would say if you're chanting japa every day, ideally doing kirtan on a regular basis. If you're hearing regularly, it's great to do it through Wisdom of the Sages. I would also say, make a little commitment. I'm going to read Bhagavad Gita chapter a day. I would read these books. I would read the Bhagavad Gita. I would read the Srimad Bhagavatam. I would read the book The Nectar of Devotion by Srila Prabhupada, which talks about the esoteric bhakti, which we're about to get into. And I would read Chaitanya Charitamrita, these books. Never stop reading these books. You can go around and around and around and cycle through those books your entire life. They're very powerful. They will be very effective in cultivating deeper devotion for Krishna. Krishna book 2, which is Bhagavatam. That's another one. And now regarding the esoteric practice of Krishna Bhakti, in Sanskrit we call it Raga Marg, or the path of attachment, right? It means that God can be approached with awe and reverence, but when we read Srimad Bhagavatam and we read the 10th canto and about Krishna's pastimes, we see that there are devotees of Krishna who love him in very intimate ways, right? Some of them love him like a friend. It's a very personal love, and that love will be expressed in certain ways, and certain stimulus, certain sights or sounds, etc., will stimulate that feeling in certain devotees, the love of friendship. And these books will go into deep detail about analyzing what is that love, what is it like. Let's hear all the details, right? The people that love Krishna as a friend, what do they dress like? How do they behave? There are different varieties of friends. They all serve in different ways and experience different types of ecstasy in their love for Krishna. Then there's people that love Krishna with parental love, not only his parents, but actually all the elders in Vrindavan, right? They love Krishna with a sense of parental love. What is that parental love like? How does it manifest? You know, how do these people dress? You know, what times of the day are they serving Krishna, and in what ways? You know, how is their love expressed? And then perhaps the most esoteric topic of all, those that love Krishna like a lover, like in a romantic way, you know, all the different varieties of love that they have for him, how they express it, how it plays out in the different pastimes, how it manifests at different ages. You know, there's so much esoteric detail. And within the Bhakti tradition, we read, you know, books about this, and we read the analysis of this, and it helps us better understand what is pure love, right? The deeper we understand it, the more clearly we begin to recognize let's say the faultiness of what we call love in this world, right? And how special this pure love is. Now, so that's an esoteric form of bhakti, right? Rag marg. There's a whole practice to cultivate it called Rag Anuga Bhakti. It's something that one needs to be a little careful with, because we can't pretend that we have it when we don't. That's just kind of like, that's hypocrisy, right? And that's the most detrimental thing to us actually ever getting there. So as we're practicing, I know that those very intimate lovers of Krishna, that they have no lust, they have no greed, they have no selfishness in them. It's that purity that becomes the fertile ground for the growth of that kind of love. And if I don't have that in my own mind and heart, then pretending is not going to help. Presenting myself to others is not going to help. What I need to do is really honor that, right? Really honor and try to understand it more, read about it, contemplate it, question people that understand it better than I do, and learn about it. Hold it with a type of reverence in my mind and heart. And in this sense, I'm practicing that path. And meanwhile, what I do goes back to the earlier part of your question. You see, people love Krishna as a friend, right? We call that Vatsalya rasa, the taste of loving Krishna as a friend. And then, you know, there's the parental love, and there's the romantic love. But there's another type of love, the love of a servant, right? The love of a servant to a master, right? That's the kind of love that we can practice very effectively in this life before we're so purified. So if in this life I serve others in the mood of dasya, we call this dasya rasa, right? I see myself, I'm your servant. I want to satisfy you. I want to do all that I can to assist you. If we cultivate that mood and simultaneously really try to more deeply understand and really honor that more esoteric love, then that's a real, authentic, genuine path towards that esoteric bhakti. All right. I'll leave
Beautiful, Kaustubha.
And that's it. Our time is up.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh man, you know what I'm doing today?
What are you doing?
I'm going to a water park.
It's so weird to be doing in the middle of like it was a freezing, crazy storm.
It's a long story, but I'm taking the kids to a water park today.
Okay, you do what you do, Harga.
You know what? They just
they want to go there.
Kids.
They want to go there, and you are being
yeah.
controlled by them. Whatever they say, they're dragging you around.
No, someone has graciously donated a trip.
Okay.
Yeah. So
well,
I'm
have fun. Try not to forget Krishna there.
I can't. Are you kidding? As soon as I jump off one of those things, I'm like, Krishna!
Okay. Dunya, thank you so much for being with us today.
Dunya is great. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for showing up today. Facebook people, we do this every day. You can find us wherever you get podcasts, right? Go to just search for Wisdom of the Sages, and you can binge listen in the same way people binge watch various Netflix documentaries or Narcos or whatever it may be. You can binge listen to the Srimad Bhagavatam. And remember, the retreat at Super Soul Farm, June 7th through 10th. And then for the weekends, we're going to do at the Bhakti Center in New York. And you could email bhaktiretreats108@gmail.com. Or also me and Cindy Lunsford, Bhakti Advanced Yoga Vinyas Immersion Weekend at Super Soul Farm, May 19th through the 22nd. That's actually filling up very quickly. So if you're interested, you can DM Hot Cindy Yoga. She's our regular Zoomer, and great soul, Cindy. We're excited to do the program with her. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, and come on back, y'all. Hands in the air. Now we dance.
And you got a big interview tomorrow.
Got a big interview tomorrow. Join us 8 o'clock also with Drew Lawrence. And then... I just found out Linda is going to Nepal too, as well as Vicky, as well as Mara, as well as myself. And I don't even know. I got to look at the list of who signed up for Nepal. I'm going to be hiking through Nepal, so you're going to be watching the show, live from the Himalayas in a few weeks, people.